You know, I was trying to decide what I was really going to speak about this evening, because I never prepare anything. But it occurred to me that since we're so close to the Amartithi, the time when Baba left his physical body, that it would be a good idea to talk about some of the events that occurred at that time of the first Amartithi. And in those days it wasn't called Amartithi. It was just that Baba had left his physical form, and everybody that was able to come at that time did so. So my brother Edward and I were amongst the fortunate ones that left to see and to be there when Meherabad had just passed away. But we have to remember that he was in state for 7 days. He wasn't just covered and buried. That's not what happened. In state for 7 days, during which time so many people from all over India, his lovers, came to pay their final respects to him. And Baba could be seen. His face was open. You could see Baba. And there were a number of really extraordinary things that happened at that time. There was one man who was a Parsi priest, and I talked to him. He came up and he was there. And now you have to understand, for a Parsi priest to come to the funeral of anyone that is not of his, I guess his church or whatever the place is that he gives his sermons and such, they don't do that. But what happened, he told this extraordinary story, and I was there to hear it, you know, so I'm telling you what he said. That he was driving along, and what does he see? But he sees this column of light coming straight up from the distance. And he's thinking, the only time, according to their religion, that this occurs is if there's a great soul that has just left his physical body, that has just passed away. So if a great soul has done this, he wanted to see who this great soul is. So he followed where this column was coming from, and of course it brought him to Meherabad, to where Baba's Samadhi was. Now he goes inside, and he couldn't see who it was because of all the other people in front of him. There was a lot of people in the tomb at the time. And he's trying to see who it is, because Baba was in the crypt and he was standing there and there were other people around. And what does he see? He says that he sees that Baba, because he couldn't see him, you know, so he said that what happened, Baba lifted himself up. Now he's telling me this. You can take it for what you like, but this is the way he described it. That Baba lifted himself up so that he could look at him, that he could see him. And he was very impressed, you know. It happened, you know, and he got to see who it is. And then he came out where so many of the pilgrims were, and that's where I met him, and he told me this story. And he wanted to know more about who this is. So I went on to explain to him certain things about the avatar and how he comes so many times, and that he was Zoroaster. He didn't seem to be bothered by that. You know, for a Parsi priest to hear that anyone else is Zoroaster, that doesn't go. That doesn't fly very well. It's like speaking to somebody who's follows Jesus and saying, and that's all that they think about, and that Meherabad is Jesus, or that he was Muhammad, you know, whatever. It depends on the person. But this priest, he was now so impressed by what he was experiencing, and there was so much love there. let me tell you, the 4 days from the time that I arrived, which was on the 7th day, I got there at 11 o'clock, just before the time was that Baba was to be covered, because it was exactly 7 days from the time that Baba dropped his body. And the reason, I'm just sort of backtracking a little bit, the reason that it was decided that this would be the time that Baba would be, the final burial would be, was because Mehera had asked Baba the day that he, just before he dropped his body, he passed away, asked Baba, how much longer will you have to suffer? So Baba said 7 days. So based on that, she decided that 7 days. And this was the 7th day. And when did my brother Edward and I arrive? But we arrived at 11 o'clock on the 7th day, and Baba was covered exactly at 12:15, which was 7 days from the time he passed away. So we got there at the 11th hour. Amazing, you know. And when Baba, when we came, you know, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the events that occurred, some of the story around this first. When Baba dropped his body, there was a cable, a telegram that came from Adi, Baba's disciple Adi. And that cable was to notify everybody in the West, and I suppose he sent it to everybody wherever there were centers and other people, that Avatar Meher Baba has dropped his physical body to live eternally in the hearts of his lovers everywhere. It was, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what it said. And when I have to even backtrack a little more now. I was driving a taxi in New York at the time. And I was planning, you know, to use whatever monies I was making to go and see Baba when he would call, because he was supposed to have a darshan for everyone, East and West, in April. And it was considered the great darshan. The Baba came out of seclusion and he allowed everybody to be coming at that time. But then he went ahead and dropped his body, you see. So a lot of people didn't know what to do now. How are we going to go? He's not physically there. They had their hopes up in anticipation of coming to see him. They wanted so badly to see Baba. Well, when I was driving the taxi that day, there was also another man, this was a few days in before that came into the taxi, and he said to me, because I had a picture of Baba and a little saying there on the back seat. So he read that and he said, this Meher Baba, I see that you are very close and devoted to him. What would happen if he suddenly just passed away? This man asked me like that. This was just a few days before it happened. So I said, well, and he said, and so what did Meher Baba give you anything? Did he give you anything that you wanted? I said, yes. He gave me, and I'll put it this way, he gave me the cake. And if he were to decide that he wanted to give me anything more, it would be like whipped cream on the cake. So he satisfied this man. But the fact that he even asked me such a question just prior to this happening, I felt, who knows who this man was, you know. Maybe Baba came to visit me to find out how I would feel about it if this happened. Well, I can't say that was the case because I don't know. But just the same, that did happen. Now, it turns out that we get the news. The part that I meant to say is that day, when he dropped his body, of course, I didn't know right away that happened. There wasn't one person that came to ride in my taxi. I was driving around for 4 hours. And over in New York, they'll hail you with their, they'll hail a cab. Never happened that someone wouldn't be hailing the taxi almost right away. So I'm driving, and I see, oh my, not one person. I'm going this one. All these people are on the streets, and they're all going here and there. No one does this. Hour after hour, this is going on. So after 4 hours, I said, that's it. I'm never going to drive another taxi again. That's the end of it. Because I wasn't going to ever do this again, and I felt I really had to move my life on anyhow. So this was going to be the end of it. Now, I turned the car back into the garage where you give them your trip card, and they take whatever money, and they read the card to see how much you made. Well, of course, I didn't make anything.
Zero.
I was completely blank card. So the man that takes the, at the cashier, he looks at me and he says, who was she? She must have been very nice. He put that up. Maybe I stopped somewhere and there was no business. So that was the end of that. Well, now I call up David Barrison, and he was, and his wife at the time, and I thought, I just got to take a break. And that's when they read me that telegram from Adi, that Meherabad had left his physical body to live eternally in the hearts of his lovers everywhere. See, that was how it happened. Now, at first, I thought, is this real? I questioned it, whether this was really a real thing that happened, or whether it was. So I said, read it again, because I see this book here. This is just one of them. I have 4 books of letters and telegrams and cables and all kinds of correspondence with Meher Baba from 1960, from the time I came to know of him to the time that he left his body. 4 books like that. So I was already familiar with the way that Baba communicated. There was a certain way that he did. And so that's why I wanted to hear this telegram again. I wanted to hear it with what I knew to see if this was genuine. And sure enough, when she read it again, that was it. He read it again. Oh boy, I said, this is for real. Now, I was in New York, and Fred and Ella Winnefeld were the group head of the Meher Baba group at the time. So I thought, instead of going and visiting my friend, who I thought I would do, now I'm going to go visit them, because I want to get a final confirmation of this. And when I came to their apartment, of course, they were receiving calls from everywhere, because there had been something in the newspapers about, it was an article that, a very small article too, that Meher Baba had passed away. He was silent in a cave that he lived in for a long time. Well, anybody that knew anything knew he wasn't in a cave. It was for certain. However, I did think that this was a very merciful thing, because it softened the blow of people that knew about Meher Baba, and then they read this here, that he passed away, but in a cave, so it creates some sort of a question and a doubt as to whether the article was really genuine. So they would call Fred and Ella, to find out. They were the group heads. And that's when they would get the real information about it, that Meher Baba was in Meherabad. Now, when this happened, the group heads throughout the country, the Sufis and the Baba group heads in different places, were advising all the people, all the Baba lovers, not to go to India now, because a lot of them felt that, well, maybe we should go, be at where Baba had passed away, you have to go there. And they didn't want them to go because they said that it would be too much of a burden on Baba's disciples to have to not only be dealing with the fact of Baba leaving his body, but also all the people and their needs and everything else from the West. So they were advising them not to do this. And of course, Fresnella being in New York, saying the same thing. And I'm listening to this, they're telling him not to go. I'm going. My brother Edward and I, we decided, what is this here? I'm Baba's son. I'm going to be where the Father is. How can I say I'm not going to be going? And so I said to Fred, with all due respect to you, Fred, I think to let you know that even though so many people are being advised this here, I want you to know that Edward and I are leaving. We're going to go as soon as we can possibly make it. And so he was a bit shocked, that we would do that after being told not to do this. So I said, Fred, I need to tell you something. If you don't go, you will regret it later.
Yeah.
You'll see. You'll regret it later. Well, he didn't go at that time. He did go later on, but not then. And when he finally did go with the other groups that were going, he told me that he was sorry that he didn't go. Because I knew, because I knew what was in his heart, you see. It wasn't a question that I was so smart. It was just that I knew his heart. And so, all right. So now, all these people are coming after, Baba had that great darshan that he wanted everybody to come to. And they were all coming in bus loads and in plane loads. There was so many people coming. And it was really quite interesting because when Edward and I went there, the first thing that happened when we arrived is that Erich was at the foot of the hill, and of the Meherabad hill where the tomb was up at the top, and he says, "Where are all the Westerners?" So I said, well, and in the meantime, we're looking around, and there's thousands of Easterners. There are thousands of Easterners. They're going to take care of thousands of Easterners? You have to take care of them. They would take care of themselves. And that's exactly how I felt. I said, I don't need anybody to take care of me. I can do it for myself, when I go. So he says, where are all the Westerners? I said, well, this is what happened. And then I told him. And out of the entire West, there must have been only about 7 or 8 people that came from the whole West. That it was all that could get through all those instructions, messages and whatnot that they had. But then you see later, for the actual darshan, which was to be in Pune, not in Meherabad. Meherabad was where Baba's Samadhi is. That's where I wanted to go, up there. So we stayed there for 4 months until the last week of the darshan. Baba allowed people to come for 1 week. You would be there in Pune at Guru Prasad, the Guru Prasad Hall where he was to be, and you'd be there. And there was so much love and there was so much feeling. But the part that I need to really tell you is that when we arrived on that 7th day, there was such an atmosphere in the entire place it was so intoxicating. I mean, truly intoxicating. The kind of love and feeling that there was just permeating the entire hill. For 4 days it was like that. And Harry Kenmore was one of the people that did go, and he said, and he just said it out, he said, this is intoxicating, and it was true, it really was true. it was something that you don't normally experience. All right. Now, I never thought that I would ever be in a position or in a place where I could actually help cover the avatar himself. Because when it came time to, at 12:15, to cover Baba, you see, here, you try to get this picture. Baba was in the crypt, but there was the box that he would be in, the lid of the box was under him, and he was resting on top of the lid of the box. The box was then inverted when it went over him, you see, when it was lowered down. And that's how it was where Baba is. So I had one, there's four ends to the box. So I had one end with, I think, my brother, and then and there was some others, they each had an end and lowered the box over. You know, I never thought that would ever be part of my fate, to be present at the time of the burial of the avatars. You might consider it, you know, as any past avatar, maybe Jesus or something, you know, if you were present at the time, because later on, millions and millions and millions of people worship and revere them, and, you know, like that. But I never felt that I had to revere Baba. I always felt very like he's just really a close member of the family, you know. There was never the thought, like your grandfather or somebody that you really love in your family, and you had this extremely warm relationship with them, and they always gave you the best advice because they were always out to help you. They were interested in your well-being, and that you should be you should be taken good care of and such like that. That is the way Baba was in my relationship with him. Like he was a very close, or closest member of the family. And he was not necessarily to be worshipped and revered in that respect. I mean, we know who he is as he is explained in his God state, the God state. But he didn't present himself that way when he was in his human form. He wanted you to just love him and be close to him and feel natural. You know, and nothing unnatural, no supernatural. It wasn't needed. It was just to be really natural with him. And Baba liked that a lot. Well, anyhow, when I first heard about Baba, I sent him a poem. And it expressed how I really felt about coming to see him, because this is before I saw him. And I'm going to read to you this poem that I sent to him and what he said afterwards. My book is by the pound, in case you're interested in all that. All right. You might think it's a bit bold of me to say what I'm about to read. I wonder how it would feel to be if I could become you and you could become me. Would I help you to become like me if I were you and you were me? Since you can see how you are me, and I can't experience how this can be, would you then lift my ignorance from me and help me to see true reality? Since it is you who are ignorant and it is really not me, you said yourself, you are me. And since it is true that I am you, even though to see this is hard for me to do, would I be content as you to know that I am here and suffering so? I could never ever see why I torture me, much less can I see why I keep my grace from me. And since you are me, you're wondering too why I do this, since I am you. And if I were you and you were me, would you ask me for the grace to see reality? Would I, in a moment out of love for you, let you see reality and illusion too? Or would I make you work and suffer much more before I would open for you this door? How I wonder how I would be if I were you and you were me. Since it is you who is you, and me who is me, and since I truly desire to see reality, would it then be too much to beg of you to help me love you as you would like me to? Just a moment of your grace could lift the suffering from my face. Will your answer then be just a letter to me? Or will your answer be my lovely reality? So this was well, I meant every word. Believe me, this was not just, a frivolous poem, just to be poetic. So then Baba replied. He sent me back a letter, and in the letter he asked me. Well, first he said, I wonder if I got it in here, what he actually said. Let's see. Well, I'm not seeing it right away. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, here it is. This is what came back. And it came back from Adi. My dear Irwin, your beautiful poem was received. Beloved Baba heard it. He wishes me to ask you whether you approve of this poem being released in the Awakener magazine solely devoted to Baba. Baba sends his very endearing love to you. Yours brotherly, Adi K. Irani. And I replied back that Baba should do as he pleases with the poem because it is his poem. Like that. And it was actually printed in the Awakener at that time. So that's one of the early things that really kicked off my connection with Baba. And when I heard about Baba, it was from a book, Listen Humanity. And there was a discourse in there that Baba gave called The Highest of the High. Some of you may remember what that is. Amazing message. It was comparable to the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus Christ gave and the Four Noble Truths that Buddha gave, and such amazing spiritual understandings that were given in those ages. Well, this was what Baba gave in this age. But in this highest of the high, there were two things that really struck me. Well, first of all, it was the terrific love that he had for humanity. But he also said in there what he wanted, what he expected from others that approached him, and what they could expect from him. You see, these two things were in there. And one of the things he also said is who he is. He said, I am the highest of the high. I am the ancient one. I am God the beyond, and God in human form. And I said, this is really great. I'm going to go meet the highest of the high. I always wanted to meet the highest of the high, but I didn't know who was the highest of the high, where it is. Now, for the first time, I'm actually seeing that Baba unabashedly is explaining who he is. And that well, of course, there are other descriptions too about what the consciousness of such a being that's highest of the high and God realized is. Well, that all impressed me very much, and I said, now I really got to go. And I was on fire to go. It wasn't just some intellectual thought, it'd be nice to meet Meherabad. And not at all. I was burning to go. It was like this was my next step. This is what I had to actually do. And then, of course, circumstances worked out where eventually I was able to go. And the reason that circumstances worked out is because Baba, when nothing worked out, I wrote to Baba and I said, I want to come and see you, but the only thing preventing me from coming is I don't have all the money to go. And I know if it's your will, I'd be able to go. So Baba wrote back, don't worry, circumstances will adjust themselves. So all along, for 6 months, when nothing adjusted themselves at all, yes, there was no yes, there was always a no. No, you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, no, 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 no. And then all of a sudden, after Bob said that, everything turned to yes. And believe me, you're going to love it when everything is yes instead of no. And everything began to work out. The circumstances all came together. I'm not going to get into all of that. I did give talks about it other times, but this is different now. So these are some of the things that occurred, and I really started off with the last time that I was there with Baba, which was at the Amartithi, which now the anniversary is coming up, and going back to the beginning, as to reading you that poem, because I wanted you to know how I really felt. I was not the kind of seeker that was seeking even to see him in his physical form. I mean, I thought that was great, don't get me wrong. That was very nice. But that was not the point, because the point was what Baba kept saying even when I was there. I am not this body. Don't mix me up with the body. This is not what I am. You have to see me as I really am. And I was sitting there thinking, hearing this, and I said, good, this is exactly what I want. I want to see him as he really is. That's where you come home to know your true self and to know what Baba's actual experience is, not just the limited consciousness that we're presently having. So Baba told me some really great things about that over the course of time, because he knew exactly what was in my mind and how I felt. I don't think it was hard for anyone to tell, but he was very knowing of it, and he told me some great things about that. Sometimes people think, oh, what an egotistical thing. You want to become God, realize you want to be God? Well, what kind of an ego is this? But of course, you see, it's only due to misunderstanding. The true understanding is your true self, as you really are, is unlimited. It's limitless. Not limited as we may experience within the physical form and body that we have with the 5 senses that we try to understand the whole universe with. It's not that. I mean, we're not seeing it right. That's why Baba said that it's all illusion. You're looking at things and you think it's this and that. And it's not that way at all. But to gain the consciousness of that he has is the goal. It's his consciousness that's the highest of the high, and that is the goal. We have to become one with him, not just stay limited in what we think we are. You see, we are functioning through the mind with all of the impressions of the mind. This is a state transcendent of the mind, where you're the creator of the mind. You see, but we don't experience that. So we go to him to liberate us, to experience what is true, what is reality. Now, I picked out something in here that I'm going to read here. This is one of my true poems called Heaven's Gate. Today, there was a lot of love in the world. You may not have seen it because of the clouds. Earthquakes that kill hundreds of thousands. Tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, maybe a meteor hit that can wipe out so much life on the planet. Nature's disasters that we call an act of God. Then there are the acts of some men, murderers, muggers, hate-mongers, civil and national strife of all kinds, political, religious, family conflicts, and wars. Lots of pain in a most amazing variety of ways. Yet there is a sun, but there are also clouds that hide the brightness and the life-giving energy of the sun. If I were God and I saw all this, I would want to do something to make things better for both the ignorant and the wise. But you are the one, the Son of all life and love, the Master of all things. You took upon yourself the mission to raise the consciousness of the world, so we may see the truth for ourselves. When you come, you punch a big hole in the clouds, however many and dark they may be. Your sunshine, which is always there, can now be seen in the midst of any misery. Those who follow your beam join your light beyond the clouds. O Lord, Savior of the blind, the day is beautiful beyond measure where you come from. To see your cloud-piercing ray is to follow you beyond the clouds that hide you. Then lo, heaven's gates are open, while the battle rages below. If anyone has any questions.
Irwin, I remember years ago you talked about this, but that moment you were in the tomb, and you just mentioned that you helped lower down the casket, but you helped, I think, to also pour dirt on the tomb, into the tomb. Is that correct?
Well, the way it happened is that after Baba was covered after Baba was covered in the box, it was lowered down over Baba, then the Arangaon villagers from Lower Meherabad came and they covered the whole crypt with the earth, with the earth, and it came right up to the top. You see, there were steps that went down. You don't see that anymore because that was all covered over and sealed up. But then there was the earth, just even with the top of the what do you call it? The tomb. In the tomb, it was just the earth. Now there's a marble stone that covers it, but there was no stone then. It was just the earth. And what happened is they would put a really lovely cloth, like a big cloth, a beautiful cloth, would go over the top of the earth, and people would come and bring their flowers or bow down and pay respects to Baba in the Samadhi. Now, it's really important, and I'm glad that you mentioned this, because the really important thing was that Baba had explained previously that whoever comes to the tomb of a perfect master, not Baba, but a perfect master who's also God realized, will benefit materially and spiritually. And that, but those who come to the tomb of the avatar will benefit only spiritually. But that spirituality is so high that it includes everything. You see, it includes everything. So, because in the spiritual world, it's the gross world, the subtle worlds, the mental worlds, all worlds, and beyond all worlds, that is the spiritual world. And Baba, being the Baba said that you can be sure that he lays down his body, that's where his power is. And while he doesn't do anything purposely or intentionally on his own, those who come and they surrender their impressions, and bow down in their own devotion or in their own way, or even if they're not devoted, but those who come and pay respects like that, they benefit from that incredible power that the avatar has laid down in where his body is. And this is like a gift that he gives to whoever is willing to make the pilgrimage and go there. The other thing is that his I'm trying to think what else Baba explained about that, because it was very important that people should get this benefit. Very important for their for their advancement into higher consciousness, you know. But anyhow, that was part of what he explained about his body being there. But people do come and they, as you know, many of you may have done already, they bring some flowers or bring their hearts there. Yeah.
And Irwin, I just wanted to say that the marble slab was gotten by Fred Ella.
That's right.
Really?
Fred and Ella Winterfeld from Italy. And I remember that Padre, who was the one that would take care of, you know, he was more like an engineer, would build things. He was wondering how to get that slab there, because, you know, inside the tomb, and actually place it there, because it's fragile. In spite of the fact that it was such a thick marble and all, it was still fragile and could crack. So one day, what happens is that the villagers from Arundel had come up, and they had picked up the marble slab, and they were beginning to bring it into the tomb without him. And then somebody came and told him that the marble slab is being going, or so he ran up the hill, you know, to try and supervise whatever was left that he could supervise. And they did put it on there, and then it's there till this day, and it'll be there probably always, you know.
Did they go to Italy, or they just ordered it from Italy?
What?
Did they go to Italy, or they ordered it?
It was, I think they actually went, you know, and they spoke to them, and the people that were going to do it, and they explained how they wanted it done and all like that. Did you want to say something? Oh, okay. Yeah. It was, I'll tell you, you know, Baba, I've been reading these Tifon lectures. Has anyone seen that book, the Tifon lectures?
I haven't, but I've read it.
Yeah. Well, there's one theme that the Baba kept repeating over and over and over and over again and over and over again. I don't know how many times to say over again, because it was so many times over again. And that theme was the difference between what the consciousness of people that are trying, like the yogis, and everybody that tries to make any efforts to experience God, to get to God, and how difficult it is, even if they arrive at the heights of the mental sphere of the sixth plane, where the mind can actually perceive the infinite self as God. Even then, they cannot cross over without the aid of a perfect master, a spiritual, the perfect master. And Baba went further to say, those that surrender themselves to the perfect master, it becomes then his responsibility to take them over to the last hurdle. But he doesn't just take you over to that, he takes you from where you are to where you should be. So even if you were an ordinary human being, not even seeking or doing anything, and you approach the perfect master, or the avatar, and you said, I want to know the truth, I want to know what's real, I want to see God. then he could take you just from where you are. You don't have to go through all these planes, like which is what the spiritual path consists of. The spiritual path is the path to all the higher planes, which are very beautiful and all like that. But Baba said it may be very beautiful, but the boy can really hang you up because it's so attractive. You don't want to leave it once you get to experience anything. And then so the way he does it is he takes those who get under his guidance where they don't see a thing, but he takes them through all of I should put it this way. He removes all of the obstacles that prevent your realization and experience of the God state. And he does this behind the scenes. So you're just living your life normally, and he's doing all of that, to remove. And why? Because he said even the yogis, the most, with all their efforts and everything, or advanced souls, he says that the best they can do is wipe out the impressions or the mental impressions that prevent their God realization from this life. But they cannot go back into the depths of evolution from where they acquired consciousness. And that's where the perfect master comes in, because he can see the whole thing right from the start when you first got your first glimmer of consciousness. So this is one of the things that he explained. But then he said that when the time comes that all of your inner obstacles are removed, all those mental impressions are removed that prevent your self-realization, he said, then it occurs in a second. It just occurs in a second. Because if there's nothing to stand in the way of it, then you got it. That's it. It's only because of what stands in the way that you can't experience it. But he won't let you experience these planes. He will only give you the true thing at the end. And he said that is of a circle and all of those that he's to give liberation or experience God realization with. So there you have it. Now is ordained.
Right, yeah.
So I never had to worry about him, because everything was already now on the track. I felt the same thing happen when Baba dropped his body, that it's like he put me on a track. It's like a train track, track, and you can't get off of the track. You have to just go where the track goes. And that's how he would,
I was at the center in 15 and a half, almost 16, the day we got the news that Baba had dropped his body. And I didn't use the word intoxicating. It was just like fairy dust in the air. I mean, it was just like, it was intoxicating. When you said it, it was at the center. It was bam. It's almost like you couldn't see. It was just whatever. Anyway, I'm thinking that too was when I felt this, no matter what I did for the rest of my life, it was Baba's. And it was, he had handled it. It was whatever. And I went through some crazy stuff, but I managed to always flip on the good side of it, which was just amazing to me. And I think it's amazing to most of the people in my family and everybody I know, that it always, but it happened right that moment. It's just like that moment. I was too young to really understand it, and I didn't, and I was also very upset because I was a child, and I was very upset that Baba would leave before I would get to see him. And from an adolescent kind of place, kind of like angry.
I may say that people have asked me.
And then I couldn't go to the Sahabas because I was too young. Also, for my family to let me go.
Well, this reminds me that people ask me, how do I communicate with Baba now that he's not in his physical body? Because in those days we were able to send him a telegram, or there was communication, or go and see him. And it just brings me back to how Baba said to do things. He said the mental world includes the minds of all beings everywhere. All you have to do is just think of me. Direct your thoughts to me. Because in the mental plane, everything is instantaneous. The laws that govern the mental plane there's no limits. So the moment you think of him, and the moment that I'm talking about sincerely, and you really have something that you really have to project, to ask him or project to him, or whatever you have in your heart and mind, if once it's sincere, that reaches him. It don't even, it's not a bunch of words. And the way he answers is usually through your circumstances. All of a sudden you see, no became yes, like I said earlier. But something happens where things work out better
And
for what you want, what's good for you. Now, he's not here to do just, everyday miracles, but those things, when it's necessary, can be done. And the real thing, of course, is to eventually see him the way he really is, because that really solves all the problems.
Irwin, thank you.
Thank you.